A common mistake I see is people pursuing originality. I think originality comes on its own as long as you spend enough time thinking and like solving problems yourself. In many ways, when you look at the greats, a lot of them started out by imitating and copying the best people around them and the best people they had access to so that they could figure out their own style, their own voice, and then improve on things. I think a lot of innovation begins as mimicry and imitation, and then it evolves. I've also noticed that a lot of people who do great work end up becoming experts in two fields and then innovating on the intersection of those two fields. An example I can think of is Eli Goldratt, who was a physicist and then became a business consultant. And he basically combined his knowledge of the two, as well as philosophy, to create some really groundbreaking strategies to improve supply chain efficiency and logistics, as well as just general business philosophy. Things like theory of constraints, critical chain project management, identifying bottlenecks and constraints rather than just trying to solve any problem or improve any efficiency. And this was really unintuitive for me when I first learned it, but it makes a lot of sense now, which was basically that if there's a bottleneck downstream, right? So let's say one person does work, they produce files, and let's say someone else reviews those files and releases them. Now, if this person is producing 100 files a day, but the person reviewing and releasing them can only do 10 a day, then even if you 10x the effectiveness of the person who is producing the files, they can produce 1,000 files a day, but the output is still 10 files a day. So you have to identify the bottleneck or the constraint, in this case, the person reviewing and releasing files, and help them. So if you 10x their output, you actually 10x the overall output of the system. And as you basically expand bottlenecks, the bottleneck will switch somewhere else. So you have to get good at identifying them. So all of this really came from his background as a physicist. So whatever work you're doing, whatever expertise you're gaining, it could be useful to you in a future field. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you need to innovate in that specific domain. The other thing think people underestimate is just the value of general knowledge. So Valve, the company that publishes Steam and makes a bunch of other games and products, basically had this idea of a T-shaped employee. So the T represents, the depth of knowledge at the bottom, as well as the breadth of understanding at the top with those wide arms. So the idea is you need to be an expert in one or two things, but then also have a wide general understanding so that you can apply that to the world at large. Because of this, people often get caught up on, oh, specialist versus generalist, but Valve basically said, why not both? And that's the answer, right? You can do both. You have plenty of time and effectiveness to be able to learn the surface level of a lot of things, as well as the depth of one or two things, maybe even three, depending on your interests. But yeah, let your curiosity be your guide. Figure out what is something that feels like play to you, but looks like work to others, and that's where you'll likely become a master at that field.